My name is Lena Carter. I'm 27 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your identity begins to disappear is that it doesn't feel like something is being taken from you. It feels like something small, something almost reasonable. I work in IT project management. Stable job, good salary. I go to the gym a few times a week. I have friends. I function. From the outside, I look like someone who has her life together. And maybe I do. But there are parts of me that don't fit neatly into that image. Parts I never thought I'd have to defend. I've been watching anime since I was 12. Not casually, not in a sometimes I'll put something on kind of way. I mean, it shaped me. Full Metal Alchemist. Brotherhood was the first story that made me sit still after the credits rolled and just breathe. Like something inside me had shifted. From there, it was everything. Cowboy Bebop, Attack on Titan, March Comes in Like a Lion. Stories about grief, about purpose, about what it means to keep going when everything inside you feels broken. Stories that said things most people don't know how to say out loud. I also play D&D. Have been for 6 years. Same group, same table, every Saturday. And I'm the DM most of the time. I build worlds, entire ones. Maps, characters, moral dilemmas. Stories that unfold slowly, shaped by the people sitting across from me. It's creative in a way nothing else in my life is. It's mine. My group, they're not what people imagine. Rachel teaches elementary school. Maya works at a nonprofit. Jordan is one of the most emotionally intelligent people I've ever met, and she plays a chaotic barbarian named Grundle who solves everything, with violence and terrible decisions. These are good people. My people. I also have a manga collection. 30-something volumes. Some rare, some signed. Berserk, Vagabond, Goodnight Pun Pun. Stories that are darker, more honest, more human than most serious literature people brag about reading. I even have a tattoo on my forearm from one of them. It got me through a really bad year in college. I never used to hide it. Or I didn't. Before Ethan. Ethan is 28. He works in marketing. He's sharp, polished, the kind of person who knows exactly how to present himself in any room. When we first started dating, he seemed fine with everything. He'd glance at my manga shelf, nod when I talked about D&D, smile when I got a little too excited explaining a plot twist I was building. I thought that meant acceptance. I thought it meant he saw me. It didn't. It meant he was waiting. About 3 months in, I was telling him about a new campaign. I was excited. Really excited. There was this morally gray antagonist I'd been building, someone the players would actually sympathize with, someone who would force them to make a choice that didn't have a clean answer. I was pacing a little while I talked, hands moving, brain faster than my mouth. Ethan was on his phone, scrolling, not really listening. Then he looked up. "Babe," he said, smiling slightly. "I love you, but the D&D thing is so..." He didn't finish the sentence. He just made a face. That face. Nose scrunched, lips tight, eyes narrowing just a little, like he'd smelled something bad. I laughed. Of course I did. He laughed too. And just like that, the moment passed. Except it didn't. Because it wasn't the word. It was the reaction. The instinct. The way my excitement had triggered something in him that looked like disgust. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was just a joke, that couples tease each other. It wasn't just a joke. The comments started showing up more after that. Always casual, always wrapped in a tone that made it hard to push back without sounding overly sensitive. "You're really spending your Saturday playing pretend?" That one came when I was standing by the door, keys in hand, about to leave for Rachel's place. I paused. "It's what I do every Saturday, you know that." "I know," he said, not looking up from his phone. "I just wish it was something I could actually tell people about without it being weird."
It's
Weird. That word sat with me the entire drive. Like I had something to be embarrassed about. Like my hobbies were something you'd hide behind a vague answer at a party. Then came the anime. Jetto. He sent me an article one afternoon. Some opinion piece about how men who are really into anime tend to have issues with women. Objectification, misogyny, all of it. I read it. I understood parts of it. There are toxic corners of that community. But that wasn't me. Not even close.
but
"I'm not saying this is you," Ethan said later, leaning against the kitchen counter. "But you have to admit, the overlap is kind of uncomfortable." I stared at him. The overlap between me watching a show about a guy learning not to hurt people and misogyny? He shrugged. "I'm just saying, it's something to be aware of." That's how it always sounded. Concern. Awareness. Like he was helping me. And the worst part? I didn't fight it. I said, "Yeah, I guess I see what you mean." because I wanted him to see me as a good person. And somehow, he'd framed something I loved as evidence that maybe I wasn't one. That's the thing about this kind of erosion. It doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like correction. Like someone gently adjusting you, making you better, more acceptable. And I let it happen, every single time. Looking back now, I think the first real shift, the moment something inside me quietly moved, wasn't when he insulted my hobbies. It was when I started agreeing with him. Moving in together felt like progress. That's what I told myself. 10 months into the relationship, boxes stacked in the hallway, his coffee maker next to mine on the counter, his shoes by the door, like they had always belonged there. It looked like two lives blending. It wasn't. It was one life, slowly taking up more space than the other. The manga shelf was the first real test. It had been in my living room long before Ethan. Dark wood, 5 shelves, carefully arranged. Not just books, memories. Years of collecting. Hunting down out-of-print volumes. Waiting in lines at conventions for signatures. Choosing which series deserved a place at eye level. It was part of the apartment. Part of me. Ethan stood in front of it one afternoon, arms crossed, head tilted slightly. I remember the exact angle of the light coming through the window. Late afternoon, soft, quiet. "Babe," he said, "can we move these?" I was on the couch, laptop open, half working. "Move what?" He gestured. "The comic books." I closed the laptop slowly. "They're manga. To anyone who walks in here," he said with a small shrug, "they're comic books." There it was again. That tone. Not aggressive, just dismissive enough to make correction feel pointless. "I like them where they are," I said. "They just make the place look a little..." He hesitated, choosing the word carefully. "Immature." The word landed heavier than I expected. Immature. Like everything I loved was something I was supposed to outgrow. "It's my apartment too," I said. "I know," he replied quickly. "I'm just thinking about first impressions. When people come over." People. His people. That night, I stood in front of the shelf alone. I ran my fingers along the spines. Berserk. Vagabond. Pun. Stories that had carried me through versions of myself no one else had seen. And I heard his voice in my head. Immature. I packed them. Carefully. Quietly. Like I was putting something fragile away. Except what I was really doing was erasing evidence. I told myself it was a compromise. It wasn't. A compromise would have been moving them to the bedroom. This was disappearance. The shelf stayed empty. And every time I walked past it, I felt it. That absence. Like a missing tooth your tongue keeps going back to. It didn't stop there. A few weeks later, he had friends over. Dinner, wine, easy conversation. I was doing fine. I kept things light, neutral, safe. At one point, someone asked what I was doing that weekend. I hesitated for half a second, then said it anyway. "Oh, I've got D&D on Saturday." 4 words. That's all it took. The conversation moved on. No one reacted. No one cared. Nah. But later, after everyone left, Ethan pulled me aside in the kitchen. His tone wasn't angry. It was worse. It was controlled. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "Can you not bring up the D&D thing around my friends?" I blinked. "It just came up." "I know, it's embarrassing." Embarrassing. I stared at him, trying to understand how something that felt so normal to me could feel like something he needed to hide. "It's just a hobby." "It's not a normal hobby, Lena." There it was again. Normal. A line being drawn. "You know what I mean," he continued. "People go hiking, play sports, do things that aren't sitting around pretending to be characters. I don't want people looking at my girlfriend and thinking she's that kind of person." That kind of person. He didn't define it. He didn't need to. I nodded. Of course I did. Because arguing would have turned it into a bigger thing. Because I didn't want to be difficult. Because part of me had already started wondering if maybe he was right. So I adjusted. The next time someone asked what I did for fun, I said, "Gym, hiking, just normal stuff." I don't even hike. The party that really stayed with me happened a month later. Rooftop bar, downtown, his coworkers, string lights overhead, city glowing behind us, drinks sweating in our hands. I remember thinking, this is the kind of place he feels comfortable. We were making rounds, smiling, introducing. Everything felt smooth until it didn't. One of his coworkers, Daniel, started talking about a new live-action adaptation of an anime on Netflix. He was excited, genuinely excited, and without thinking, I lit up. "Oh, I've been watching anime forever," I said. "I actually read the original." We started talking. Not intensely, not weirdly, just normally. 2 people connecting over something they both liked. And then I felt it. That shift. I glanced at Ethan. He was standing next to me, drink in hand. And his face, that expression again. Tight, controlled, irritated, embarrassed. Like I had done something wrong. In public. My voice slowed, then stopped. I changed the subject mid-sentence. Daniel looked confused. The moment died.
Wait.
On the Uber ride home, Ethan stared out the window for a long time before speaking. Did you have to go full anime nerd in front of my entire team? I felt something sink in my chest. I was just talking to him. He brought it up. You weren't just talking, he said. You were doing that thing. What thing? The thing where you get really into it, talking fast, using your hands. It's a lot, Lena. A lot. Me being excited was a lot. I'm sorry, I said automatically. And the second the words left my mouth, something inside me twisted. Because I wasn't sorry. But I said it anyway. It's fine, he replied. Just be aware of how it comes across. Be aware. Translation. Control yourself. Be smaller. Be less visible. After that, something changed. Not all at once, but steadily. At his events, I stopped engaging. I smiled, nodded, answered questions in short, polished sentences. What do you do? Project management. What do you do for fun? Gym, hiking. Safe. Neutral. Approved. I started curating myself, editing out anything that might trigger that look. That subtle flash of embarrassment. At home, it got quieter too. I stopped talking about campaigns. Stopped sharing ideas. Stopped being excited out loud. And the worst part? I didn't even notice how much of myself I was cutting away. Until someone else did. Rachel pulled me aside one Saturday. We were between sessions. Dice scattered across the table. Hey, she said gently, are you okay? Yeah, I replied quickly. Just work. She studied me for a second. You've been kind of distant. I'm fine. Is it Ethan? The question hit too close. No, I said immediately. Too fast. She didn't push, but I could tell she didn't believe me. A week later, Maya asked me something similar. Then Jordan. 3 separate conversations. 3 people noticing the same thing. You used to send ideas to the group chat every day, Jordan said. Maps, storylines. You haven't posted anything in weeks. I didn't have an answer, because I hadn't even realized it. I had stopped creating. And I hadn't noticed when it happened. That's the scariest part. Not the comments. Not the looks. The moment you realize, you've already started disappearing. After that, I started hiding things. Not because Ethan ever stood in front of me and said, stop. That would have been easier. Cleaner. Something I could point to. Something I could defend myself against. Instead, he made everything I loved feel so embarrassing, so inconvenient, so socially radioactive, that I began removing it on my own. That was the genius of it. He never had to take anything from me. He just made me ashamed to keep it. I stopped watching anime in the living room. If Ethan was home, I'd put on something neutral. Some background show neither of us cared about. Something forgettable. If I wanted to watch something I actually loved, I waited until he was in the shower, or answering emails in the bedroom, or out with friends. Then I'd open my laptop and put my headphones on. Volume low. Screen angled. Like I was sneaking around in my own home. Once, he walked through the room and glanced at my screen. Is that the cartoon thing again? Not anime. Not what are you watching? Just that. The cartoon thing. Like the words themselves had been chosen to make me feel ridiculous. I clicked the window closed so fast it startled even me. He didn't say anything after that. He didn't have to. D&D got worse. Not openly. Never openly. Ethan was too careful for that. He'd just start right before I was supposed to leave. You're going again? Or, do you guys seriously never get tired of this? Or my favorite. I actually thought we'd have a real night together, but I guess Fantasyland wins again. He always said it casually. Always with enough plausible innocence to make me feel unreasonable for reacting. But by the time I grabbed my keys, the guilt was already there. By the time I got in the car, I was already half apologizing in my head. By the time I sat down at the table, part of me was still back in the apartment, carrying the weight of his disappointment like I had done something selfish. Eventually, I started skipping. Just one Saturday here and there at first. Then more. Then enough that it became normal. Rachel texted me after one missed session. Everything okay? I stared at the message for a long time, then typed. Busy week, sorry. A lie so small it barely felt like one. But it was still a lie. And once I started, it got easier. Maya checked in next. Jordan sent me a voice note that was mostly joking, asking if I had been kidnapped by corporate America. I laughed when I listened to it. Then I cried in the bathroom with the sink running. because they could feel me disappearing even from a distance. And I still wasn't ready to admit why. 8 months ago, I told Rachel I was taking a break from the campaign. She didn't interrupt me, didn't argue. She just looked at me for a long second over the edge of the table and asked very quietly, "Are you sure this is what you want?" Not, "Are you busy?" Not, "Is work stressful?" "What do you want?" And I remember feeling this flash of anger at the question. Not because of her. Because I didn't know. Or maybe because I did know, and I hated how obvious it sounded when someone else said it out loud. "I just need space," I told her. She nodded. "All right, your seat's still yours." That almost undid me. I went home and told Ethan the group understood. He said, "Honestly, that's probably for the best." For the best. Like he was talking about me quitting smoking. Like a part of my life had been cleaned up. The campaign went on without me. Of course it did. People adapt. Stories move forward. Empty chairs get filled. Rachel texted once in a while. "Just checking in, we miss you." Maya sent me a picture of a terrible dice set she said I would have hated. Jordan wrote, "Come back before they ruin your NPCs." I read every message. I answered almost none of them. Not because I didn't want to, because every unanswered text became proof of something I didn't want to name. That I was choosing the relationship over the people who loved me as I was. And the worst part is, Ethan never asked me to cut them off. He just made every version of myself they knew harder and harder to reach. Then he found a new angle. Not just embarrassing, concerning. He started connecting my hobbies to character flaws, immaturity, social awkwardness, escapism, and sometimes, in this polished, morally superior tone that made my skin crawl, he'd imply there was something suspect about the communities themselves. One night he showed me a post about how certain fandom spaces attract misogynistic men. He handed me his phone like he was presenting evidence. "I'm not saying that's you," he said, "but I do think it says something about what kind of environment you're choosing." I stared at him, at the word environment, at the way he said it. Like my Saturday game with my friends was one step removed from a cult. "Rachel runs the campaign half the time," I said quietly, "and Maya literally works in victim advocacy." He gave this little shrug. "I'm just saying, sometimes people don't realize what they're normalizing." Normalizing. He talked about my life like it was contamination. And because I had already spent months being worn down, part of me still searched for the reasonable interpretation. Maybe he just didn't understand. Maybe he was trying to help. Maybe I was too defensive. That's how deep it had gotten. I was helping him argue against me inside my own head. About 2 months ago, Ethan went out with friends. Dinner, drinks. One of those nights where he'd come back smelling like cologne and rooftop bars and expensive gin. I stayed home. The apartment was finally quiet. No commentary. No looks. No correction humming in the walls. I stood in front of the closet for a long time before I opened it. Then I crouched down and pulled out the box. The one with the manga. The one I had packed like a good girlfriend trying to be mature. Dust along the lid. Tape curling slightly at one corner. I carried it to the floor and sat down beside it. For a second, I just looked at it. Then I opened it, and there they were. All the versions of me I had folded away. I picked up Berserk first. The spine was familiar in my hand. The pages smelled like paper and ink and old comfort. I sat there on the closet floor reading with my knees pulled up, the overhead light dim, the apartment around me silent, except for the occasional sound of traffic outside. And somewhere in the middle of it, I started crying. Not because of the story. Because of me. Because I was 27 years old, sitting on the floor in my own apartment, reading in secret like I was doing something shameful. Because I had let this become normal. Because I had let someone make me feel childish for loving things that once made me feel most alive. I cried so hard I had to put the book down. My chest hurt, my throat burned. And underneath all of it was this horrible, aching realization. I missed myself. Not in some dramatic, poetic sense. Literally. I missed the woman who used to talk with her whole hands when she got excited. The woman who filled group chats with campaign ideas at midnight. The woman who put books on shelves because she loved them, not because they matched a curated living room. I missed her like she had moved away and forgotten to leave a number. When Ethan came home that night, he found me on the couch. The box was back in the closet. The evidence erased. "What did you do tonight?" he asked, dropping his keys into the dish by the door. "Nothing," I said. "Just watch TV." He smiled a little. "See, that's a normal night." A normal night. I said nothing, but something cold moved through me when he said it, because for the first time, I heard the sentence clearly. Not as a casual comment, as a verdict. A normal night was one where I disappeared successfully. I started therapy 3 weeks later. Not because Ethan suggested it, not because I even fully understood what was wrong, Because one night, I typed a sentence into a search bar I could barely bring myself to look at. My partner makes me feel ashamed of my hobbies, and the results terrified me. Articles, personal essays, therapist blogs. Words I hadn't expected. Identity erosion, shame-based control, emotional manipulation. Not screaming, not threats, not ultimatums. Just the slow dismantling of a person through repeated contempt. I sat in the glow of my laptop reading story after story that felt too familiar. People talking about becoming smaller in their own relationships, about editing themselves, about mistaking disapproval for honesty, about losing entire parts of who they were because the climate around those parts became unbearable. Climate. That word stayed with me.
Sunday.
My therapist asked me in our second session, "What did you used to do for fun before this relationship?" I laughed a little because the list came out so fast it surprised even me. Anime. D&D. Manga. Conventions. World building. Map design. Character creation. Story arcs. Article. She let me talk. Didn't interrupt. Just watched me keep naming things like I was pulling them out of deep water. When I finally stopped, she asked, "How many of those do you still do?" I opened my mouth, closed it, looked at the floor. "None," I said. She didn't respond right away. She let the silence sit between us until it felt impossible to escape. Then she asked, "Who made the decision to stop?" I answered automatically. "He never told me I had to." She nodded once. "I didn't ask who told you. I asked who made the decision." I stared at her, because suddenly I understood what she was saying, and I hated how much it hurt. No one had ordered me to put myself away. He had just changed the weather around every part of me that mattered, until hiding felt like the only way to stay warm. After that session, something shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. For months, everything I felt had been filtered through shame. Every thought ran through the same question. Is this embarrassing? Is this too much? Is this something I should hide? But now, there was something underneath that. Something quieter. Something sharper. Anger. Not the explosive kind. Not yelling, not breaking things. Just this steady, growing realization that something had been taken from me, and I had helped it happen. I started noticing things differently. The way Ethan reacted. The way he phrased things. The way every concern somehow pointed back to the same conclusion. Be less. One morning, I stood in front of the closet again. Same box, same dust along the edges. But this time I didn't hesitate. I pulled it out, carried it across the apartment, and set it on my desk. Open, visible. I didn't even read anything. I just left it there, like a statement I wasn't fully ready to say out loud yet. Ethan noticed immediately. Of course he did. He always noticed the things that disrupted the version of me he preferred. He paused as he walked past the desk, looked at the box, then at me. And there it was, that expression, that small reflexive nose scrunch. Are we really bringing those back out? A few months ago, that would have been enough. That one look, that one sentence. I would have laughed it off, closed the box, put it back where it belonged, in the dark, out of sight, out of mind. This time, I didn't move. "Yeah," I said. My voice was steady, more steady than I felt. He frowned slightly. I thought we moved past this. I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to translate his words into something softer. I heard them exactly as they were. We moved past this. Meaning, you stopped being that person. You moved past it, I said quietly. I just went quiet. Silence.
Oh.
It stretched longer than I expected. He didn't have a quick response for that. Didn't have a polished sentence ready. He stared at me for a second, then turned, walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge like nothing had happened. But something had. The box stayed on the desk. I didn't touch it, didn't explain it, didn't justify it. I just let it exist, the way I used to. Later that day, my phone buzzed. "Rachel, session this Saturday. New campaign. We could really use you." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen. And for a second, I felt it. That old reflex. The hesitation. The voice in my head that sounded too much like Ethan. Is this worth it? Is this how you want to be seen? Is this embarrassing? Then another message came in. "Maya, we saved your seat just in case." And then Jordan. "Also, we refuse to let anyone else butcher your NPC." I laughed. Actually laughed. Out loud. It startled me a little, because I hadn't heard that sound from myself in a while. I opened the group chat, scrolled up, months of messages I hadn't been part of. Jokes, screenshots, half-formed ideas, the kind of chaotic creativity that used to feel like home. And then I saw it. A message from weeks ago. "Rachel, She'll come back when she's ready. She, not you, not Lena. She, like they already understood something I hadn't been ready to say. I typed slowly, then stopped, then deleted it, then typed again. Save me a seat Saturday, I'm coming back. Yeah, Rachel replied almost instantly. Finally. Maya, I'm bringing snacks, the good ones. Jordan, look who remembered she has a personality. I sat there staring at the screen, smiling in a way that felt unfamiliar and completely natural at the same time. And underneath the smile, there it was again. That feeling, the one I had almost forgotten. Being wanted, not the edited version, not the safe version, not the version that says gym and hiking at parties. The real one. That night I didn't hide my laptop. I didn't wait for Ethan to leave the room. I opened an episode, pressed play, let the sound fill the space. He walked through at one point, paused, looked at the screen, then at me. I didn't close it, didn't reach for headphones, didn't apologize. He lingered for a second, like he was deciding whether to say something. Then he didn't. He just walked away. And for the first time, his silence didn't feel like approval or disapproval. It just felt like noise that didn't matter. We haven't had the conversation yet, the real one, the one where I say everything I've been swallowing for the past year and a half. But it's coming. I can feel it. I know what he'll say. I've rehearsed it in my head 100 times. You're overreacting. I was just being honest. I'm trying to help you grow. You're choosing this stuff over us. And for the first time, I think I know what I'll say back. This isn't about anime, or D&D, or books on a shelf. It's about the fact that somewhere along the way, I started believing that the parts of me that made me feel most alive were the parts I needed to hide to be loved. And that's not love. That's management. 6 months ago, the idea of losing this relationship would have terrified me. Now, it just makes me tired. Because if being fully myself is enough to break it, then it was already broken. Saturday is in 2 days. I've already picked out what I'm bringing. Dice set, notebook, the old campaign sketches I never threw away. I don't know what happens after that. I don't know what happens after the conversation. But I know this. The manga stays on the desk. The anime plays out loud. And I'm not going back to the closet. Because I've spent 18 months shrinking myself into something easier to hold. Quieter, cleaner, more acceptable. And all it did was make me disappear. I'm done disappearing. Rachel's going to hand me the DM screen. Maya's going to make a joke about my dramatic storytelling. Jordan's going to interrupt me halfway through the intro like she always does. And I'm going to sit there in that chair that was never really taken from me and build something again. A world, a story, a version of myself that doesn't need permission to exist. And this time, I'm not letting anyone convince me that being alive is something to be embarrassed about. Because that feeling, the one I get when I'm laughing too loud, talking too fast, hands moving, mind racing, the one he called too much, it has a name. It's called being me. And I'm not apologizing for it anymore.